Hello, it's Rhea. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, I hope you are enjoying yourself. So here we are after a long while, probably 3 years or more, and we are finally at the end of my sketchbook. That is right, we are at the final page. So I have my base sketch here, which I've done with palette color Eno, I think in red. But I realized that the sketch was slightly off whenever I first show it, so I just take a brief moment to edit it off camera, and then we will jump into the main sketch. So after that, I am using my frixion point knock pen here in blue to draft out my drawing, and if you remember the very first page of my sketchbook, it's of my OC Zure, and she's at the museum since I got the sketchbook from the Met Museum. So I wanted the final page to kind of keep that same energy, even though I went a little bit off script for this one, but I had many ideas on how I could execute this. I think initially I wanted her to seem like she has one of those like halos that you see akin to some of like the older paintings that you might see in the museum, or kind of like whatever that heavenly effect is when you have a bunch of lines in a circle around someone too, maybe like in cold. But in the end, I simply turned it into the moon since I associate Zure with the moon. She's not exclusive to this. I associate many of my OCs either with the sun or the moon or the stars, anything sky related, celestial things. It's quite the habit, but it's always fun to like tie that theme into them. I do also turn the edge of the page into a frame to tie that museum theme back in. Honestly, this might be the first time I try to keep the first and last page of my sketchbook on a correlated theme, and I actually really like the idea. I feel like it's kind of fun because if you think about it, sketchbooks are kind of like an artist's own one-of-a-kind unofficial art book, and each one is like a volume, so having a theme, at least for the opener and outro page, is kind of like a fun way to tie whatever you want in. So it could be either based on the sketchbook cover, it could be based off of where you got the sketchbook from, like in my case, it could be based on whatever you are feeling at the time of starting and finishing the book, anything. So I think I enjoy doing the whole like intro outro page thing this time around, so I'll likely do it for my next sketchbook, but I'm still thinking on what I want the intro page to be, because it can feel pretty weighted, but I don't really want to overthink it and ruin the exciting vibe I have towards working on it, so maybe I'll just keep it chill, I don't know, we'll see. But let's talk about the process on Zure's illustration for a bit, because y'all, it was a struggle. I'm gonna be so honest with y'all, like, oh my god. So you've probably already seen it, and I always end up usually putting the like supplies in the description anyways, but the watercolors that I'm painting with are the holbein set. And then this brush, I think is like called Interlon. Is that the brand? Do I have it near me or anything? I don't, let me see. I feel like I generally keep it on my desk. Okay, yeah, so this is the Interlon. Yes, I got this brush whenever I was in Japan, so I likely got it from Sakaido or another art store. It might be available to me somewhere, like that I can get in America, but I'm just not aware of that right now. Plus, another thing is I don't want to get too into like talking about brushes and everything like that, because I still feel like I have a lot to learn whenever it comes to painting. I enjoy painting a lot, but it's just not something that I've done too much of. Which is ironic because literally the only art classes that I took in high school were for, I think, painting. It's like painting up till painting 3. I think I took painting 3 my senior year. But still, it was like we only used acrylics, and it didn't really feel like I was learning anything. It was kind of just like, woo, paint whatever you want, and that's all we would really do. So that's another reason why I say it doesn't really feel like I've had any official art classes. I've had maybe a couple, like literally 1 or 2 in college, but it was just like drawing foundations, which was still way much more helpful than high school, so I am grateful for that. But the point is that I haven't really painted. So there's only so much information I can give people about like, oh, this is the right brush to use and all of that. I can tell by intuition, but I don't know how to translate that into instruction for y'all, so bear with me. Anyways, back to the process. So I start out fairly decent, right? I had the sketch done and everything, and I was going in on the background. I only planned to use watercolors this whole time because I really enjoy it as a medium and I want to get better at it, but I knew I just knew, like I knew it was going to be a pain trying to make sure that she looked how I wanted her to. And by that, I essentially mean her skin tone. So the way that I do the moon at first with like the yellow and then I add like the little purple later on, it felt so freaking pretty. And I was like, okay, bet, let's go, I'm ready. And then I prep her skin. Like you see me right now, I'm placing down a lighter brown on her hands to indicate where the palm of her hands would be. But then I get into coloring her face and oh my god. Okay, so Zude is undeniably dark-skinned. It's one of the things that I love about her design, and especially with the potential that it gives me with using other color palettes. So I told myself damn well to just use alcohol markers for her skin, if nothing else. But I just couldn't bring myself to, there's no guarantee it would have turned out better, but if I did, I imagine it wouldn't have been as difficult as trying to fight with watercolor because as you can imagine, watercolor is usually a naturally lighter medium on terms of appearance. Literally a few pages before this, I was practicing painting medium to dark skin tones with watercolor. And it's obviously possible, right? I actually think that that page turned out kind of cool or like fun, but there's so many factors going into this specifically that made it tricky. I think the main issue is this paper works similar to hot press, I believe. And if I know anything, I'm pretty sure it's like hot press paper is easier to stain or it settles in faster than cold press paper does. Like cold press paper works good for blooms and gradients. So with hot press, it's like a little bit more harsh. And I could be yapping nonsense, so take this with a grain of salt because by no means am I advanced in watercolor or anything like that. But basically, despite me trying to zoom and add as much as the watercolor to her face as I quickly could, it would still naturally come out patchy. And honestly, that could be from it being the final page since I've had this sketchbook for a while. And sometimes I'd store other paper at the end of the sketchbook and I don't know if they like rubbed against the page or something. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. It sounds wild, but it's like, it could be possible for this page to essentially not be fully untainted. And maybe that affects how the paint is going on to the page, but it is also definitely my inexperience too. I do like 2 to 3 washes over her face, and then I just figure to color in the rest of the areas that might have shadow a bit, kind of like the hoods of her eyes and her nose, etc, etc. Speaking of, don't ask me a damn thing about the lighting because girl, I don't know. I never know. I'm just doing like I know I need to work on lighting and values so much and I really want to, but I haven't. And I feel bad, I promise. I really, hopefully soon, but you'd think because the moon is behind her, she'd be backlit, which you do kind of see me try to honor a little bit through rim lighting, but I don't know, y'all. I'm sorry, okay? I don't know. But basically, her skin, I just figured like, it looks patchy now, but surely I just need to keep building it up with more layers and it'll smooth out, right? Generally that worked for me whenever I was practicing the skin tones with watercolor on the same paper. Again, it was like a couple pages before this. You'll see it on the tour. But the problem with that, or rather like the difference, was that I did that practice on a smaller scale in terms of faces. I did not do a full portrait like I'm doing here. And when you do a portrait-sized drawing, when you color, it's really hard to get a flat wash with alcohol markers and watercolors too as well, usually. Or like, it's just more practical to color it in a way where you start with where there is more saturation or shadow. So that's why it's like I start around the eyes or nose and cheeks if I'm trying to color something in like that, as opposed to just a very flat, almost cell shading style. Long story short, the skin was stressing me out because I really thought that I would just go over it more and more and it would eventually fall into place, and anything that was looking off I could just fix it with colored pencil later. So I wanted to mildly crash out whenever the paint started spreading around and moving and lifting instead, and so she just ended up looking very patchy and terrifying, and I was like, no, please don't do this to me, not on the last page. And so I had to do something that I was not expecting to do at all. Desperate times were calling for desperate measures, and I had to bust out the gouache. I did. I really did. Don't get too excited either because I literally have no idea what I'm doing with gouache for most of the time. Like, I think I know, but I don't. I've only used this medium like 4 to 5 times before this, so it's kind of insane for me to do that on the final page of my sketchbook. But again, she was desperate. She was going through it. She was like, no, I have to fix this. And when watercolor doesn't work out, you know who's there for you? Gouache. And yes, I could have also said the same for acrylic, but I I guess I do technically have acrylic paint, but I'm mostly thinking of like using paint markers. And honestly, whenever it came down to it, I just didn't want to have that jarring difference that would inevitably happen between the mediums, and that's why I went with gouache, because gouache is very much like an in-between of acrylic and watercolor, kinda, sorta, maybe. I'm very much like giving so many disclaimers because I'm like, I don't want anyone to come for me like, actually, I studied all 3 painting mediums for 500 million years, and you're wrong about everything that you said. Again, everything with a grain of salt. But since I knew I was likely going to work on her face with the gouache, I wanted it to still kind of look cohesive with the rest of everything in the painting. And because gouache is kind of like that medium similar to watercolor, but you can also build it up, and in that case it looks very similar to acrylic whenever it reaches a certain kind of opacity. And yeah, like I wanted to make sure that, again, everything was connected in a way where it wouldn't be too jarring if I did her skin in like gouache. Also, with all this talk about gouache, I feel like I should definitely clarify that I am talking about the himi jelly gouache. Because I have that little palette. It's like the twin one. So it's like I get more colors and stuff like that. Also, that's another thing. Using that gouache, it's just ironic that I even used it, because one of the hardest things for me so far with it as well is trying to get a proper skin tone for anyone like medium or dark, because it doesn't really have colors that, like, it's up to color mixing, and I'm getting the hang of it still, so it's definitely not perfect, but I likely could have added more layers as well. You'll see whenever it's placed down, but using it felt so scary since I wasn't sure how it would look or if I was even doing anything right. And with gouache, especially if you've ever used it, you know that it's very common for things to look unhinged and concerning, at least at some point, and you're supposed to push through anyways, but I'm telling you that's not good for my sanity. Like, I literally had to turn my camera off for the beginning layers so I could lock in without that whole pressure of me ruining my focus and executive function, so that's why it suddenly cuts to some gouache already being laid down. I think right now I'm working on the jacket part, or like whatever like this top is. Also, yes, I know I could have used masking fluid, but sometimes it's fun to just make things difficult for yourself because you can, okay? I'm kidding. But like, I do think that it's nice to just do something like without the easier way every now and then. Not to necessarily humble yourself, because I do believe in efficiency, but just to understand what it feels like to do something the hard way and realize that it's very much possible. And in this case, it especially is helping with my brush control, which I definitely need to practice with. And speaking of things I need practice with, it's finally showing me placing down the gouache. So I will say this medium can be so confusing and maybe even frustrating, but I do have fun with it in a way. I also like the potential of how it can look, so I really do hope to use it more and just get better at it. As it stands, I think just a couple days ago I revived the palette with some water and stuff because it was definitely getting dry and cranky, but yeah, I hope that it stays lively now so I can use it more comfortably, and I also hope that it doesn't grow mold. But you'll see during the sketchbook tour some of the pages or sketches that I've done with this gouache, and while I do think some of them are kind of atrocious, some of them aren't too bad, you know? So it's definitely like a hit or miss moment, but I've been wanting to make a video using the gouache maybe and like highlighting it, but we'll see. Maybe whenever I get a little bit better. But unfortunately for this skin, it does still stay patchy afterwards, and I was not happy with it at all. But one, it was still somehow better than it looked before in my opinion, just because it's fuller and more opaque. But two, as salty and as hurt as I was, it's just a sketchbook. Like, it doesn't need to be a full-on illustration right now. That's okay. You know, you try out something and it didn't end up perfect, but we can move on and we can remake it later. I will say though, I think the hair kind of bomb. I don't know, it was pretty fun. Again, I think Zore's palette, like her color palette in her character design, I say that like she has like a specific outfit per se. It's not necessarily true, because she is like fashionista girl, kind of, sorta. She likes fashion, and I enjoy putting her in like primary colors generally, or like including primary colors. So because it's just natural in her palette. So along with her dark skin, she has these sort of like yellow, pale, moonish eyes, and then she has blue hair. It's like an interesting blue. It's like, and sometimes I switch it up. Sometimes it's a little bit more green leaning, sometimes it's a little bit more like navy leaning, but I guess like midnight blue. I don't know, but it's very pretty. And so it's the blue from the hair, it's the yellow from the eyes, and then lastly, the ribbons that I often give her are always red. So again, primary color scheme, very fun, very enjoyable. And with doing the hair, I think that's where I got to really enjoy the benefits of hot press-esque paper, because again, it's like, it's not like this sketchbook specifically says which one it is, because it's just a regular sketchbook. Like, I don't think it's made in mind with it being for watercolor, but again, I feel like its properties are definitely more hot press paper leaning. So it was just really fun to get all the different like overlappings of values in the hair. I feel like it turned out really fun and cool. So, but unfortunately, yes, how you see the skin is how it stays. I just hate that it ended up being so patchy. Like, I think I wanted to like continue to fix it, but I was like, I feel like if I continue to mess with it, I'm going to screw it up, because unfortunately, as gouache is like watercolor, it will definitely lift if you mess with it too much. So I was like, oop, never mind. I know there's acrylic gouache, and I do have that, but I don't think I had it in like her shade, or in a shade that I was comfortable putting down for her. So I was like, I'm not gonna open that can of worms this time around. I'm just trying to get through this. So yeah. And then lastly, I'm like, or not lastly, I think we still have a couple of things to add, but the rose petals, of course. I really just can't help myself. I don't know why. I think I've like become addicted to adding some kind of like floating petals towards stuff, but it's just fun and adds like a fun little atmosphere. I do feel like I need to get better at executing it, on how it's like making it feel more flowy, if that makes sense. But I do look forward to the sketchbook tour. Please don't let this page be like a kind of what deters you from seeing how it actually comes out as a full sketchbook, because I do think it came out pretty great. I think this is probably one of my best sketchbooks, if not the best one so far, just because it feels so balanced. Like, there's so many different things in it. You get studies, you get fan art, you get full page illustrations, you get OC content. Like, normally I'm quite leaning towards a side or another, or it's just kind of like giving nothing burger, but I feel like this time around it genuinely is really fun, and I've enjoyed working in the sketchbook. I definitely would recommend it. I can't remember what it is. I'll probably update it when I go to do the tour about like which. I know it's a Fabriano sketchbook. So, but yes, I'm just so glad to have it done and to move on. It sucks that, you know, with my final page ending like this, I definitely wanted it to be a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, but it is what it is. It's not horrible. Honestly, like overall, as much as I talk shit about this drawing, it still looks iconic compared to the first page. And I know you're probably thinking like, this is kind of a hot mess, like portrait-wise. And I'm like, yes, it is, trust me. But again, compared to the first page, it's kind of cooking. You have to see the vision, okay? Stay with me. Whenever we get to the sketchbook tour, I will show you. But at this point, I'm just going in with my colored pencils. I usually use either holbein or faber castel, some prismacolors, so but just going in and kind of touching things up a little bit. Sometimes I'll use pen, sometimes I might even use like acrylic marker, just depends. And so after that, I will take off the tape and then retape the inside of the painting, so that way I can create a frame on the outside of it. And again, I feel like it looks kind of cheap and derpy, but I mean, it is what it is. But I am finally doing the lettering, I suppose, my very crappy lettering, but I'm not. Typography, despite being a designer, that is not my strong suit. I admire it, but my goodness. I'm just painting the au revoir, which is goodbye. And my apologies if my French sounds horrible. Listen, it's been ages, okay? I've moved on. She's learning Spanish now. But yes, because if you remember the intro, it said, basically hello or welcome, my love, or something like that in French. And that's a perfect note to leave things off on, because I will indeed be saying goodbye, just like in the sketchbook. But let me know where you're at on your sketchbook and how it's going. Hopefully well, and if not, then I'm sending you good sketchbook vibes. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed your time here today, let me know by leaving a like. If you're interested to see more, you can always check out my other videos and subscribe. If you're new, I'm Rhea or Etheria, and I like making art and art-related content on my channel. I try to post frequently, but otherwise follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, Tumblr. But until next time, thank you guys so much for watching, and I wish you a nice rest of your day and week and month. Happy June, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.